Welcome to Don't Quote Me on That. One day we will have an intro, but today is not that day.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Kalina.
And I'm Elanor.
And welcome back to Don't Quote Me on That, where my co-host is always paying attention.
All the time. 100%. I've never not paid attention.
And I myself am also so good at paying attention that I definitely had an idea for what we were going to talk about before we started recording.
You did have the idea well before we started recording. You are not lying. You are leaving out important context to make yourself look better, but that's a trick that I do, so I can't really complain about it.
I was gonna say I learned from you. I was trying to practice, what you preach and all that. I mean, you seem to be doing okay.
I am doing okay. I do have a salary.
Oh, I was gonna say you have a knife.
Oh.
You and I have different bars for okay.
Well, I have both at the same time.
Which is more than most people can say. And by most people, I mean Kalina. So, and today we're living up to our slogan of we're kind of talking about a movie because it's kind of a movie. It's my favorite kind of movie.
Yeah, I would argue that it is a movie. I do believe legally it is classed under movies on Netflix, this particular genre.
It is.
So, we win. We've never done anything wrong in our entire lives.
We try to maintain the suspense when I always forget the title of the episode is what we're talking about. So anyway, we're not the only people. Oh, I'm sorry. We're not the only people who do that. So
and also, can people read? I know I just cut you off to say some nonsense, but
it's funny you say that though, because what we're talking about, I do think we're going to get into the topic of not necessarily just reading, but media literacy and comprehension skills, and honestly, just the general lack thereof that the general population has. Because today we're talking about John Mulaney's not so new now stand-up special, Baby J, which came out on Netflix at some point in time recently.
Correct.
And I feel like you might be better at giving us a recap of who John Mulaney is for those of us who don't know.
Yeah. I got you guys. So, 1982. August. John Mulaney is a stand-up comedian. He has been in the game for a while. I think his first special was 2009, but he also worked on such hits as Saturday Night Live. Mm-hmm. He was a writer for Saturday Night Live for a while. He
love those guys.
Had his own show also for a while. He has an interesting Netflix show with Nick Kroll. By interesting, I mean bad. It's bad.
Not our cup of tea.
No, but it's okay. I'd say probably around 2015,
mm-hmm.
Probably maybe closer to between 2013 and 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Tumblr got a hold of him.
Yeah.
So he's really big with or he was for a while really big with teenage girls. Well, he has a joke, I think, in the special that we're talking about, where he's like, if you haven't heard of me, ask your daughter or your son, as long as he doesn't do sports.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of genre. He had, I think 2018, I want to say, a special come out, his second Netflix special, and it was good. He was kind of known for being a wife guy, and things were good.
Well, we'll get into that.
We will get into that, unfortunately. And then in the course of between 20 19 to currently, his reputation kind of fluctuated. Mm-hmm. In the sense that...
Wait, real quick, sorry.
Yes.
Just to give you a more accurate timeline. John Mulaney New in Town, so that was like his first, I think, big-ish special. That was on Comedy Central. That was 2012. And then 2015 was The Comeback Kid. And 2018 was Kid Gorgeous. Those were both on Netflix. And then he had some weird Netflix TV show with a bunch of children. And then Baby J was this year.
Okay. I was shockingly close.
No, you were spot on. Because I was thinking about how you're saying it was somewhere between 2013 and 2015, which makes sense. Because New in Town, I know I saw stuff from. But The Comeback Kid, I think, was bigger.
Kind of, yeah. That's, yeah. Yeah. So between currently and then 2018, his reputation got kind of weird. In the sense that, he... Well, honestly, the drugs aren't even about... He did have a relapse on drugs, which we will be talking about later and probably dedicating a good portion of this episode to. And he also... His relationship with his wife fell apart. There are a lot of people speculating that they cheated. There are other people saying that even if he didn't cheat, he was kind of scummy. We don't know the exact ins and outs, but like the timeline is like understandably blurry for a lot of reasons, and it does sort of seem like the sequence of however it happened, but kind of big moments where went to rehab for a while, relationship with his wife dissolved, got into a new relationship, had a baby. Whatever order those happened in seemed like short enough to where there is probably a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
In a way that people kind of seem, they take it very well. Which is like, in some ways, fair enough. Probably shouldn't cheat on your wife. But also, does it really matter?
And like, I think this is going to be the point at the end of the day, is we are not John Mulaney. Like, yes, one, doesn't matter. We're not John Mulaney. Two, we're never going to know the exact timeline because we're not John Mulaney. And three, we don't know what other things are going on. Because, like, we don't know him. We're not in his life. We're only, like, what we're getting is, like, what was leaked out to us, for lack of a better word. So, like, we're not getting we don't know the 50 other things that were going on.
That is correct.
I don't know. Something about, like, celebrity and obsession
And I feel like, at this point, him setting the record straight, even if there is, like, a record to set straight, it wouldn't help or hurt. It would it would probably just make things worse, no matter what the actual truth is. You know?
One of the first reviews I saw of Baby J was, I love how he didn't address the cheating rumors at all. Because, like, that wasn't the point, though. Like, that's not what he was tackling. And, like, yes, cheating is bad and awful and you shouldn't do it. But unfortunately, I do think going to rehab, like, kind of takes precedence over. Maybe I cheated on my wife and I need to apologize about that.
Yeah.
I had an active drug problem that could have killed me. I feel like that's just, like, slightly more pressing.
Definitely at the time, the more pressing issue. And it sounds like, in some respects, that has been worked out.
What was that?
For context, I'm recording on my bed, but my headphones that I had to use were in the bottom of a bag that I've been toting around with me for 2 days. And in the bag includes such fun things as wedding photos. A knife from Egypt. A phone cord that I took because you can never have enough phone cords.
Yeah, what happened is I just saw Elanor hold up a phone cord and then look very concerned for a minute. So I thought she had unplugged something but couldn't figure out what it was.
No, I thought I had unplugged something too because all my cords are black and that doesn't make it very easy to differentiate. Also, it is a Brooklyn Nine-Nine tote bag.
Oh my god, who got you that?
I don't know, it just showed up in my house one day.
Oh, that's why you're not getting your gift.
Anyway. John Mulaney. don't cheat on your wife, but also, like,
do you want to, like,
I feel like as a community, we've moved on.
Talk about, because I liked this special. I saw a lot of mixed reviews going in. It's people either loved it or people are like, I can't believe people are watching the Mulaney special because blah blah blah. I liked it. However, I liked it both in terms of comedy and also I liked it in terms of the issues it addressed, I think, on a larger scale. Not even addressed, but like just based on people's reactions that I saw to it. So, long story short, would you like to go through it by like jokes you remember, or do you want to go through it based on like, I think, larger social issue, essentially?
Well, I don't remember a whole bunch of specific jokes.
Okay.
So I think going by issue is a better idea.
I think that makes sense. Okay, my first issue. People need to take a media literacy class. Everyone on the planet needs to take a media literacy class. Okay? Because I'm so sorry. I had more faith. I had less faith in the human race. Not after watching this, but after watching people's responses to this. I tweeted. It's a screenshot of a Tumblr post, and it says, "My bad for assuming everyone has critical thinking skills." By the way, and I said that's how I feel when I see the responses to Baby J, because they were just bad. They were
brain dead. Yeah. Like, part of my issue is that I feel like the overlap between Taylor Swift fans and John Mulaney fans is, there's a big overlap there. And I think that is a fact. And maybe it might not be true, right now at this current moment. But for a while, it was true. Okay? Like, the weird gays liked Taylor Swift. They liked John Mulaney. I think Taylor Swift fans go way too far in the other direction of being able to, like, pick up on hints and clues. So if you're in the pool who likes both, and you think that Taylor Swift putting 5 H's in an Instagram caption automatically means this, but John Mulaney literally doing one step below saying, I was acting like that because I was on cocaine. How can you make up dots and connect them in one? But you can't even connect the dots that were, like, all you had to do was move the pen half a centimeter to get on the actual page, and then you'd be fine.
I'll be honest, like, that's what made me finally watch it, is I saw a tweet that was, someone had tweeted a TikTok, okay? And the TikTok was of this girl, and she had clipped part of the opening where he, like, alludes to being on drugs, and she pauses and goes, so is this John Mulaney confirming that he was on drugs the whole time? That was him telling you. Because, and then she didn't put this part in the video. I think like 5 minutes later in the special, he flat out says he was addicted to cocaine from this time to this time, and he was actively taking other drugs at the same time. He wasn't hinting at it. He wasn't he like spoon fed you the information.
Yeah.
Also, my thing is, because people, when everything first started coming out about him and his reputation started falling apart, is everyone was like, this is why you can't trust the wife guy. John Mulaney wasn't ever really a wife guy. He was a wife guy in the sense that every other comedian, for the most part, made jokes about hating their wife, and John Mulaney was like, no, I love my wife. She's great. But, like, he wasn't a wife guy. In fact, shocker of all shockers, I don't know how no one saw his relapse coming or any of this, because his whole thing was kind of talking about how he was addicted to drugs when he was in college. That was like a good, at least 50% of his jokes, if not more.
His first special, it's not on Netflix. It's called The Top Part. You can download it on Apple Music, which is why I've heard it. He's got a whole thing about being drunk as a teenager. And I'm, on some level, it is normal to experiment with drugs and or alcohol. If you're getting blackout drunk at 13, that's a problem you're probably going to want to have to watch out for. And unfortunately, if you do not watch out for it, it can blow up before you've even realized it. And it's also like, don't be dumb. I'm not saying John Mulaney isn't dumb for being an addict. The people who are watching the special are being dumb because they have absolutely no ability to be, like, I don't know how some of these people tie their shoes.
Because, and, like, I get that humor is subjective, and also using humor as, like, you know, a vessel, for lack of a better word, to deal with his issues, and also kind of make a public comeback, I would say, because the last we heard of John Mulaney is he went to rehab, and then he kind of, reputation shattered, went off to rehab. So this was, like, his very public comeback to address everything that had been said about him and that was going on. So, like, obviously he's going to tackle topics, and, like, not necessarily feed them to you right out, because he still wants to make you laugh. But, like, it wasn't like he was hiding them between under 15 layers of anything. It was, like, a nice little shiny veneer.
Yeah, he definitely, like, we all have somebody annoying at work who's like, you know, oh, I haven't done that, not since the incident. He didn't do that, okay? He all but gave you the name of his drug dealer, okay? Like, he
couldn't have been clearer. He gave and then the other side of the coin was, I saw a lot of people, which this is not necessarily media literacy, but, like, read the room in this sense, who were like, this special was bad. I miss John Mulaney on drugs, okay? And like, like, those jokes, I know drug addiction is real, and, like, it is a problem. But, like, sometimes those jokes are funny, okay? I'll go out here. I'll say it. Sometimes those jokes are funny. However, I do not think in this context it's good, because, one, this whole special was about how he went to rehab and kind of had to put his life back together. So, like, maybe after one of his other specials, sure. But this special that was, like, very intimate about, like, dealing with the struggles of being addicted to drugs and how that affects your life, especially when you're trying to go through rehab and stay sober. And, like, also maybe, like, give it some time.
Yeah.
Also, it wasn't that bad. Like, I didn't think it was that bad.
It really wasn't. And I feel like if you watched this special expecting him to just take you through a timeline of every single thing that happened in the last 5 years, maybe realize that he's not your friend and you're not owed that. Can I say that?
Like, and, like, also at the opening of the special, he talks about how he used to be on stage. And he said, I used to jump from here to here and whoa, be all over the place. And then he goes, I wonder why that was. And, like, again, someone else online was like, was this him suggesting that he was high when he was doing his other special? Yes.
Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't him suggesting it. That's just what he was, saying.
But he addresses it right there, and for me, this special, I don't think his style of comedy changed. His delivery was the same. You know, sometimes, like, someone gets sober and it's a very, like, marked difference. I don't think he was that drastically different. He was a little bit calmer, but also one part of the thing I liked about John Mulaney is he always had this sort of deadpan kind of comedy. So now he's just not as, like, physically in your face, but, like, he's still delivering the jokes the same way.
Yeah, the cadence hasn't really changed. Really, the subject matter hasn't changed all that much. The specific subject matter has, but, like, kind of the overarching themes haven't really changed a whole lot. It's still, like, a lot of kind of story-based sort of jokes. Like, it's really not that different. He's just I don't know. I feel like people were expecting something a whole lot different, and it's like, no. It's still a John Mulaney special. You just think of him differently now.
And then, so that's kind of back to, and then kind of veering into the media obsession thing, which is what I hate, is, like, we're not, and like Elanor said, you're not owed anything. We don't know these people. And yes, it's fun to speculate. Like, Elanor and I have these friends who, every time they post on Instagram, we text each other and go, oh my god, did you just see this, right? And, like, well, I don't think that's the healthiest, and, like, but, like, it's just for fun. But, like, at the same time, we knew these people, right? We've had conversations with them. I've been in the same room as them. I know them, okay? Yeah. Like, I know their mother, I know their parents, like, I know them. And people do that with celebrities, and it's so weird. And like, we have media degrees. I don't know if you can tell, but like the whole like that whole one-sided, very like parasocial. I don't want to say parasitic relationship, because you don't know anything about those people, and it's very nice that people can find comfort and like connection in someone they've never met. But I think you can find as deep a connection, I would say, as you could with someone you know in real life. But also at the end of the day, those relationships aren't the same, and I think people conflate the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Like I told you, everyone was like, "Oh, I can't believe he didn't address the cheating rumors." That, first of all, even if you were owed that, it's not just him. It's also something with his ex-wife, so it's not his place to speak on it alone. Second of all, that's none of your business.
Mm-hmm. And I remember for a while, like I think right around the time, or like his son was born, or it was announced that he was having a kid. Mm-hmm. People were dissecting his ex-wife's Instagram posts.
Oh my god, I know. They were like, this dress she's wearing. I was like, dude.
His ex-wife, from what I understand, is a visual artist. And, like, she was just posting her art. And yes, were there connections that people believed could be made? Yes. Does it matter? And even if, those posts were her way of saying, yes, I was cheated on, don't follow up on that. I just feel like that's a very private sort of thing. And unless her caption was, I was cheated on, ask me anything, just
exactly.
Let her be sad in her lane, please.
Because even if she was hinting at that, unless she said it outright, that is, I mean, it's really not your place. But, like, unless, yeah, like Elanor said, she flat out said, I was cheated on, all we're gonna do is speculate. And even then, mm-hmm. Not that I think she would do this, but, like, she could, like, we don't know. At the end of the day, we don't know. Like, it makes me think of, and don't ask me how I got here, but remember before everything fell apart, not too long before everything fell apart, but John Mulaney and Pete Davidson were revealed to be, like, the best of buds, and everyone was like, oh my god, John Mulaney's probably such a good role model for Pete Davidson, because Pete Davidson's obviously high all the time and has all these problems, which, like, he is high all the time, but, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he does have problems, but, like, still.
But they were like, oh, and he does lots of drugs, and I like that John Mulaney addressed this in his special. And then, like, out of that duo, right, who would you expect to have to go to drug rehab? Not John Mulaney, but it was John Mulaney. And then in Baby J, he says that he was like, now people blamed Pete for his relapse because he was like, because Pete has tattoos, like, and he looks, I guess, like trouble. And John Mulaney presents this very clean-cut image, which goes along, to contrast with his style of comedy. So I appreciated that he addressed that, and again, it goes to show you never know, because you'd sit down and be like, oh yeah, Pete Davidson's obviously the one who, like, would have to go to rehab.
I will say, Pete Davidson has been to rehab, and I know that because he has a really funny bit in one of his specials, where he talks about how as a birthday gift or a Mother's Day gift for his mom, he went to rehab, and he went to a rehab in Salt Lake City, Utah, because he didn't realize that there were rehabs in New York.
He's like, everyone in New York is high, obviously, so they can't have rehab there.
But yeah, he was like, and that's why you don't book rehab when you're high. I was like, well, that's fair enough.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
For later. But yeah, like, you would expect for the person whose life is going to blow up. It's not John Mulaney who wears suits and sounds like a guy from the 40s.
I feel like Pete Davidson was a little bit more publicly, I don't want to say publicly unstable, but, like, I think his personal life was definitely a little bit more criticized and looked at than John Mulaney's was.
In a similar vein, because I was talking about how John Mulaney wasn't really a wife guy. He did make jokes about, like, how he was abusing Adderall in college and stuff like that. But he made jokes past tense, whereas Pete Davidson, even if his jokes were past tense, it was like, last week I was doing this, Yeah. It was much more in your face and present.
And I feel like people are, even if he was, which it sounds like he was, like, actively on drugs during his other specials, he wasn't gonna go on stage and say, "Hi, I'm John Mulaney. I'm on coke. Let's do this." Like, that's not. Like, he was going to downplay it, and he was going to make it seem like it was a past issue, so that people don't try to get him to stop. Because I don't know if you've ever been a drug addict, but like, there's definitely a point in the journey where part of the whole thing is that's what you. I don't want to say want to be doing, because there's a whole lot that goes into it, but like, you're not going to be receptive to help until you are receptive to help. And if you're not receptive to help getting things fixed in any way, things are not going to change. And that's just how it is.
Like, one thing he says, and this is also towards being in the special, he talks about, so the opening of the special is him explaining how he ended up in rehab. And he talks about how his friends had an intervention for him, but obviously they didn't tell him it was an intervention. They just told him that they were having dinner at 7 and he needed to be there. And so he showed up late to his intervention and everyone was mad at him. And like, how, and then they brought in someone from like a rehab center, like a drug counselor or someone, to speak to him, and he was giving her a hard time because he didn't want to go to rehab. Like, he had just bought drugs and then showed up to his intervention, and then he said, "Do you know how bad your drug problem has to be for you to open a door and see a room full of your friends and realize it's an intervention for you immediately?" So he said he opened the door and sees 7 of his friends standing there, and he's like, "Can I go to the bathroom real quick?" Because he needs to flush the drugs down the toilet. And they were like, "No." And then he's like doing everything he can to kind of like, he's like, I was trying to destabilize the group. He's trying to like convince them that the drug counselor is not reliable so that they don't trust her, so that he can leave. So like, yeah, when you're actively in addiction, you're fighting to stay that way, even if you recognize it's not good and not the most logical choice.
It's almost like you're addicted to something.
That's crazy.
That's another thing. I saw a couple, I don't have receipts for this, but I saw a couple, like, TikToks, tweets, whatever they were, that were like, oh my god, John Mulaney's acting kind of manipulative. Shut the full...
Oh my god, no, do you know what that is? It's that stupid Noah Kahan, whatever that guy's name is, song, where he's like, even the cops thought you were wrong for hanging up, and everyone's like, I don't know if anyone else is getting this.
That's kind of mean.
Because, yeah, he's like, it rang and rang, even the cops thought you were wrong for hanging up. And the first time I heard that, I didn't, like, think anything of it, but I was like, that's kind of fun, and like, saying to someone, even the cops, but like, also, one, if you listen to the rest of the song, it's about how he like regularly is drunk and gets in trouble and then calls this girl, who's, I don't think is his girlfriend anymore even, to come pick him up. After a while, I'd hang up too. And 3, also, your man says very often in song, like, I don't listen to his music, I have even seen him say, yeah, I write about like not necessarily being the villain. And then someone was like, I saw someone who was like, I wouldn't call it, because they were debating in the comments, and they were like, yeah, Noah says like he writes from the point of view of the villain, and someone else was like, I wouldn't say he's the villain because that seems a little like Disney and like old fashioned. He's not trying to end the world. He just has an addiction. Do you know what being the villain means in media?
No,
it's not just Scar from The Lion King, like.
And it's like, did you guys not have to take... This isn't even like me and Kalina being, oh, we have media degrees, we know what we're talking about. Did you take an English class ever? Like, you know the post that was big on Tumblr that was like, my English... Or the writer, the curtains were blue. My English teacher, the curtains were blue because the guy in the story is sad and it reflects me. The curtains were blue because they were blue. Yeah, sometimes the curtains are blue. But also, your English teacher was just trying to give you basic critical thinking skills, basic being able to connect context clues. Like,
I have
context
seen
clues
enough
are
people
your friends.
Online complain about having to dissect what the green light at the end of The Great Gatsby meant for this. That like, it's entirely too many people I'm seeing not being able to decipher words in a song.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you all collectively complained about having to come up with something that the green light represented, you all should be able to come up with something that tells you that, hey, maybe the guy who calls his ex-girlfriend to come pick him up from the cops every time he gets pulled over because he's drunk isn't the greatest guy, and then tries to make her feel bad for not coming to get him one time. Maybe he isn't the greatest dude. No. I don't know. But, like, enough of you complained online about having to decipher what the green light at the end of The Great Gatsby meant. That you should be able to decipher that sometimes when the guy's singing about being drunk and getting pulled over and calling his ex-girlfriend all the time, maybe he isn't the best dude. I'm just saying. Kind of shifting into another point about, slightly still in the realm of, like, fan-celebrity obsession and the fan-celebrity relationship, but kind of shifting into likability and being the villain, because, like, take actors especially. Sometimes they're, like, not, I want to say typecast necessarily, but, like, that's kind of the audience they play to as themselves, not even as the characters they play, but, like, or, you know, how, like, they dress different actors differently for red carpets based on kind of the persona they're giving off. Like, the only thing I can think of is, like that girl from Euphoria, what's her name? Alexa Demi. And kind of how she, like, how they would dress her versus how they dress Zendaya. They've got very different looks. Or, like, any Disney star, really, especially coming fresh out. Like, Dove Cameron, like when she first left Disney. When she first left Disney. Versus now. But, like, when she first left Disney, she was still trying to keep that clean-cut image, but, like, a more adult version of it versus what she looks like now. So, like, likability, but also playing to your strengths and, like, what your demographic is, so to speak.
Even, like, Miley Cyrus, when she first left Disney, how she had, like, a complete image overhaul so that she would be disconnected from Hannah Montana.
Yeah, just in terms of likability, and I don't think John Mulaney's physical image has changed. Like, he's still very much the suit guy, like, very 40s, 50s sort of vibe. But because of the controversy around him, so to speak, obviously the vibe has changed. And he does this little ditty in the special about how all the kids like Bo Burnham more because he's currently less problematic. Likability is a jail, and that was kind of what cinched me liking this, because I'm a little cynical when it comes to media. I'm sure you all can't tell. Yes, Eleanor. You're on thin ice.
Sorry, no. When you were talking this, I had a realization, because I'm kind of a stand-up girl. I've seen a good many stand-up specials. Kevin Hart cheated on his wife a bunch. Or at least enough that, like, I heard about it. But he didn't really talk about it in his specials. Like, I think Mulaney, like, some of his most popular bits were about his wife, which is why that probably, you know, the ending of that relationship was more of a thing. Whereas, like, Kevin Hart, he didn't really take, I don't think even if he did address it, I don't think, like, that's kind of, his biggest bits weren't around that, and so we all got to move on a lot quicker than this. And not that it's John Mulaney's fault, but, like, a bunch of comedians are just bad people.
Like, I was gonna say, one, I've seen some of Kevin Hart stuff, and I don't remember him ever talking about the wife he cheated on, or the cheating. I just remember when he started talking about his new wife and their kids. I just remember that. But then, even with John Mulaney, like, not to say, like, because, you know, it could be like, well, some people are like, well, he didn't have to make a joke about that. But to be fair, like, that, like, again, that's not what, he didn't joke about his wife a lot. He's got one very popular bit that's, he asked his wife if he could make a joke about her, or his ex-wife now. And she said, sure, just don't call me a bitch. And he was like, I would never say that, like lots of comedians do. My wife's a bitch and I hate her. No, my wife's a bitch and I love her so much. And that's, like, a very popular bit of his. But that's, like, such a small fraction of the jokes he makes. And that just so happened to be what the internet, or, like, what fans took and ran with. But also, I think, again, like I said earlier, is John Mulaney got classified as a wife guy because so many comedians are, like, notoriously anti-wife guys.
Yeah, it was one of his, like, it was a unique selling point for him that he didn't hate his wife, which is, like, an unfortunate sentence. But it wasn't like, and I mean, we could get into other quote-unquote wife guys and their traits. And I think another problem, and I'm sorry, again, is just the proximity of John Mulaney and what happened with the Try Guys. People were making too many connections because we don't even know if John Mulaney did cheat on his wife. But even if he did cheat on his wife, and it happened, it culminated in the relationship that he is currently in, he is not currently in a relationship with somebody who he was the boss of. Like, the only ethical concern with John Mulaney's whole thing is cheating on his wife, which isn't good, but, like, it's not cheating on his wife and then also an egregious abuse of power, and we didn't need to be making
up your quote-unquote best friend's livelihood.
Yeah. We didn't need
your
to be
livelihood,
making as many
your
connections.
family's livelihood, And not to say that this justifies cheating, but back to the whole point of the special, he was, like, kind of sort of actively doing drugs. I don't think we can entirely blame him in the sense that I don't think he was in his rational mind. Like, obviously it was his choice to do the drugs and to cheat, yes. But, like, he obviously wasn't in his rational mind and, like, wasn't making the best decision. So while it was still his choice, I think it's not shocking that choice was made, if that's what happened. Again, we don't know.
Yeah. And it's just like, I've seen some critiques that were like, even if he didn't cheat on his wife, according to the rehab Bible, you're not supposed to get into a relationship until you're 5 years out or whatever the hell. Shut up. Okay?
Yes, and everyone does rehab perfectly and never relapses and never has any problems ever.
Yeah. Like,
he's trying.
He is. And I remember he said one of the bits he was going on was about how essentially he, like, had this whole long little scheme to get money, that he, like, sold a watch and was super sketchy, and how he had a doctor who, like, basically, doctor was a perv, basically. But the end was like, these are the stories that I'm willing to tell you. And
yeah, because you could, like, hear in the room they didn't love the end of the story, and he's like, if you think that's bad, this is just what I am willing to share with you.
And, like, we know so little about the whole thing, and leave him alone.
Because even if he was gonna go up there and be super honest, I think it was like 2 years, I want to say, or something, he was on like actively having a problem. He can't recap that for us in an hour-long special. We're not gonna get every single first of all, if he's high, he probably doesn't remember half of it. Second of all, we're not gonna get every nitty-gritty detail of this man's life and all the awful things he did while actively addicted to drugs, because it's not fun. No one wants to be there.
And it's also like, what would you gain
by
the knowledge that he did or didn't cheat on his wife? Like, that doesn't, it still continues to not impact you at all. And yeah, maybe it might impact your thought about your feelings about him, but I would say that by and large, his reputation already took a big enough hit that, like, if you, one random TikToker, like, it's not going to change anything. Also, no offense to Hollywood. Everybody cheating on everybody.
And everybody doing drugs.
Everybody doing drugs.
Another thing I saw people being upset with him for is he brought Dave Chappelle out as a surprise opener for one of his shows twice. And Dave Chappelle was making transphobic jokes. That I understand taking issue with. Because that's not just... Because, like, even if he was just friends with Dave Chappelle, I'd be like, not great, but at the end of the day, that's his personal life. We don't know anything about this man. But, like, bringing him out for a show, yeah, I understand. But, like, him cheating on his wife and doing drugs with his own body?
Yeah. And, like, the Dave Chappelle thing, I would argue, was a little bit more of, like, an active sort of choice in the matter, and not, like, on too much Coke and Xanax to be able to
drugs
think.
Choice? Yeah.
Like, we don't want you to come away from this thinking that we think that being an active addiction is a choice by any stretch of the means. Because, like, at a certain point,
And it's also not a cop
once you're
out for
hooked,
anything,
you're hooked.
But like,
it can, yeah, it's not an excuse, but it is a damn good kind of. There's a lot of reasons that are intertwined with that and that are correlated, causation, all that sort of stuff.
It's like when people say a lot of the time, like, yes, your mental health might, like, you being depressed might be why you respond a certain way to someone, for example, but it doesn't justify you, if you're responding to them negatively or treating them badly, it doesn't justify it. It might explain why you do that, but at the end of the day, you are still a person responsible for your actions, so it doesn't justify. So John Mulaney being on drugs might explain why he, I don't know, went to a pervy man in his kitchen to get drugs from him. Does it justify him doing that? No, but, like, it explains why he did that. And I don't know, I think that was all the points. So, do you have any... I thought we'd end on a lighthearted note, because also Elanor has said so many things.
No, I can hear a lot of them.
So, would you like to end on bits you have? Because there's one bit in this special that like, cemented for me that I do still like.
One of my favorite bits was he was talking about how he rocked up to Saturday Night Live when he was not hosting it at all. He just rocked up for a haircut like it was a Great Clips, and the team there was like, "You're not supposed to be here." And he was like, "Yeah, I would like a haircut." And then he said something along the lines of, because, when a guy who's really strung out asks you to do things and it's easier to just do it, that was really funny to me.
My favorite part of that bit was talking about his intervention. And he says, "The dinner party started at 7, so I went to get a haircut at 7 o'clock. I truly believed I could make both of these things work." And part of the reason I found that so funny is that's something my father has done. He didn't have an intervention to go to, but, like, he's been fully convinced we could do something at 6:45 and then make it an hour across town by 7. So,
could you?
We made it in 30 minutes.
That's terrifying. Thank you.
My favorite bit, which is what like solidified this for me, is he talks about basically, like, the negative responses he gets to things, and he says, like, at the end of the day, what is someone going to do to me that's worse than what I've done to myself? And then he goes, "What are you going to do? Cancel John Mulaney? I'll kill him."
Yeah.
Which, like, was true, but funny, but, like, at the same time, it's like, yeah, he almost probably could have done that.
He almost probably did, like, a couple times. Like, that's just... I think one problem I have with kind of stand-up specials as a whole is that they all feel the need to have some big emotional swell at the end. And sometimes it works, and sometimes you can tell they just sort of threw it in there to have it in there.
Yeah, they feel like they need to make a point.
Yeah. The first time I watched this show, I was like, I think we went into some things that we didn't really need to, in a way that we didn't really need to. Like the bit that Kalina was talking about. But then I watched it again, and I was like, you know what? I take it back. I think it was...
If it wasn't, yeah.
If it had been, the second or third special after all this things, we didn't need it. But, like...
That's what I was going to say.
I think this special, just based on, the time and the context that it came out in, was measured in a way that it kind of needed. Because I think if it had just all been bit, people wouldn't have responded. People, I don't know if they've responded well at all. I don't think enough people... I think people had already written John Mulaney off enough that not everybody watched it. But, like, if people had watched it and it was just funny...
Yeah,
wouldn't have gone over as well.
Yeah. Like, he started this out with the story. Like I said, he starts out with his story of addiction. He talks about, like, his time in rehab. One bit I like from that is he talks about how, like, he expected the people to know who he was. And he gets there and he's like, "Oh, hi, I'm John M." And they're like, "Okay, John, like, what do you do for a living?" And John Mulaney was like, "Oh, I'm a stand-up comedian." They're like, "You make money from that?" So, like, no one knew who he was. He was, like, leaving out newspapers that talked about him so they would, like, find out who he was. And then he talks about, like Eleanor said, he tells the story about how he came up with this. Oh, he talks about how he decided he needed to stop doing drugs, so he told his accountant to stop giving him cash. And he says, and then I hung up the phone, and I was he said basically he told his accountant that he needed, the only way his accountant could give him cash was if he emailed the accountant and CC'd the doctor. And then he said he hung up the phone and immediately was upset with the accountant, like it wasn't his idea. So then he came up with this scheme to get cash from himself, basically, which was for him to go buy a watch and then immediately go pawn the watch off. And so he walks you through that, and then he talks a little bit, I think he talks a little bit about his son. He tells a story about being out somewhere with his son. So he kind of walks you through the last, like, from intervention to the present period of his life. And he's telling stories the whole time. So, like, I think that's okay. Or, like he talked about Bo Burnham at the beginning. I think the way Bo Burnham does comedy makes sense for him to be having, like, a moving point, overarching, you know, message at the end of his story. Because all of the stuff Bo Burnham does is commentary. But, like, if Kevin Hart, who tells a bunch of jokes, then at the end was like, and I dreamed
and global warning.
like, that would be kind of confusing.
But I feel like John Mulaney's always sort of had emotional kind of bits. Maybe not to this extent, but context-wise, sort of needed. Or like, Patton Oswalt, I think, is a great example of a comedian who can do like a very heavy piece in a special and also have like very good comedy. Like Patton Oswalt, I don't remember the exact special. It's not this latest one. I think it's the one before that. His wife died and basically just like very suddenly left him as a single father. And so obviously he kind of addresses that because it's come up in his other specials. And I think he did, I don't remember the like specifics of it, but I do think he handled it in a very good way where it still made sense to be in a comedy special. It wasn't like other specials where it's like, ha 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 ha, and then everybody I've ever met died. Ha 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 ha. Like you can't do that.
Like, I think it depends on also your taste. Like, I like comedians like John Mulaney or like that who like talk about their lives. Then you have comedians who like tell more general stories or talk about like general situations that happen to them but like could happen to anyone. So I do like when people get a bit more specific with it. And there was a point that I had and I lost it. So just it's a taste thing, but like I think it's a little easier to be pulling off like again context. Like it's a little easier to be pulling off a moral story when you're telling like very specific stories about your life versus just very general jokes of like things that could happen in the grocery store.
Airplane food.
Yeah, or like, oh my god, this is what it's like being a woman. Ha ha ha. I'm like, kind of any woman could relate to that.
Oh my goodness, Kalina, I have one question for you that like I actually planned and then now you just made me think of another one. On your TikTok, are you getting things that are like baby boomers making bad jokes about how Gen Z can't write checks? Because I've had more than one come up. It's like this one white girl doing stand-up, and the only thing I see are like stitches of her little thing, but it's like Gen Z doesn't even know how to write a check. And why is there a market for that?
And then like okay, this is gonna sound bad, okay? And I don't want to say women aren't funny, right? Because I think women are hilarious.
Oh my god.
The funniest person I know is a woman. It's me.
Is it you?
However, that has nothing to do with anything. And the second funniest person I know is also a woman. It's Elanor. So, like, the third funniest person I know is a woman. It's my mother. Okay, so I feel like I've covered my bases. That's my equivalent of... I have a black friend, so it's fine. But I have 3 women friends. I'm one of them. Anyway, I think that jokes like that... This does not answer your question at all. I think jokes like that become, like, very popular, or comedians like that, because it's very easy to clown on them. Like, I think female comedians get big because it's easy to discredit them as female comedians. Like, I think genuinely good female comedians don't get as much of a following. because no one wants to be like, oh my god, a woman's actually funny. Do you know what I mean? But women are funny.
Women are funny. And it kind of leads me into my question, which are, what are some of your favorite, like, either specific specials or just stand-up comedians in general?
To be honest with you, John Mulaney is probably the only one I watch consistently. I like Bo Burnham's stuff. I don't like it, I think, as much as most people do, but he has a line in a song that I quote every single time I get the chance to, which is, he says, we know it's not right, we know it's not funny, but we'll stop beating this dead horse when it stops spitting out money. And again, not that I'm cynical about media or anything, but that's true.
It is very true. My goodness.
I don't know, what are some of your favorites? This is not, no, you go ahead.
I'm really into John Mulaney, Patton Oswalt, like I said. Jen Kirkman, who is a woman, has a good special called I'm Gonna Die Alone. Chelsea Peretti, One of the Greats, is really good. I find myself coming back to that a lot. Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer I also enjoy. I know when I was younger, I watched a lot of Aziz Ansari, but I think I just really liked Parks and Rec. I don't remember if he was particularly funny.
Yeah, I watched that. I watched, Donald Glover, but, like, again, those, like...
Donald Glover's stand-up is really... Pete Davidson's stand-up is actually pretty stand-up.
Okay, not to be like, I think I'm hilarious, but also I don't watch a lot of stand-up specials because it's very rare I sit down and watch something like I genuinely enjoy it, or like enjoy a good chunk of it.
Also, not to say that women aren't funny, because women can be funny. Eliza Schlesinger, not funny. Amy Schumer, not funny. I'm sure they're funny, and I'm sure, they have said funny things. I don't necessarily think stand-up is a great avenue for their kind of hee-hee-ha-ha funnies.
There's this Indian stand-up comedian I like, and it's not Hassan. But Hassan is also... I like his stuff, but I do think his style, like talking about style of comedy, I think Hassan's style of comedy is better suited for what he's doing now, like a talk show sort of vibe.
I think that about Trevor Noah.
Great? I was just about to say I love Trevor Noah's stand-up. I think his stand-up's really good. He does this bit about the first time the British come to India, and I die every single time I think of it. Especially because I think he's very good at doing accents.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you can tell someone is like, this is going to be offensive, so they don't bother doing the accent at all. Michael Che Matters. I remember liking that special.
I remember liking that. I don't remember anything about it. He's got a bit about screwing the pooch that I remember was very funny.
Yeah, that sounds like something you'd like.
Yeah, that's hurtful.
Anyway,
but that's true.
All of that to say, you get some common sense. That's all I have to say. If you're gonna watch a stand-up special, especially about something like that, get some common sense.
Yeah, please get some common sense.
And more women should be comedians.
I just think that instead
or less
of
men should be comedians. I don't know. One of the two.
I think less men need to be comedians because it's an oversaturated market, and I think because of the political landscape, I don't even know what that means. I just think people hype up men a lot easier than they hype up women. But let's have some more mid women so the really funny ones can shine.
And I was gonna say, I think that because there's so many men, and the ones we listed, I think are genuinely funny. I will laugh. I'm not someone who rewatches things, and if I do, I wouldn't really laugh at it again. And there's some comedians in there that if I rewatch, Trevor Noah, I would laugh every time I watch this special. But I think that makes men who aren't funny at all, in your day-to-day life, think that they obviously have to be funny because so many men are. And obviously women aren't. And I just think we need to take men down a peg. Because I don't know if you've ever, I've never done this, but, I don't know if you've ever, fake laughed at a joke to get out of a conversation.
What? Never.
I don't do that. I don't do that, but then men seem to take that as an opportunity to explain the joke to me. Which I didn't want that. I got it. It just wasn't funny.
Yeah, and if you have to explain your joke,
It's not funny.
you either aren't funny or your audience just
You're telling the joke to toddlers.
Yeah. Or apparently fully grown people who
Or you're John Mulaney trying to talk about going to rehab. And no one's ever taken an English class in their lives.
seriously just go back to 10th grade English. Maybe reflect on people, places, and things.
If you want us to, rag on another audience, we mentioned the Try Guys, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. I mean, to be fair, the response to the Try Guys was like 99%, I would say, pretty reasonable, I think. I did see the one or two people who were like, at first they were like, I don't know, I think we should wait to hear both sides of the story when, like, the photos were first circulating around, and then the Try Guys hadn't released a statement. But, like, no offense to them, but, like, they were like, the Try Guys haven't said anything yet, so everything's probably fine. They're just, it's none of our business. But then also, if you looked at, like, the last, like, 3 weeks of videos or something, the guy was not in them at all. They just cut it
we
out.
want both sides of the story. Well, one guy's making out with his employee, and the other guys are editing him out of their entire company. So
listen, actually, you know what? If you guys would like us to give you a shortened 50 to 60, let's be honest, 90-minute version of a 10th grade English class, I'll bring a copy of The Great Gatsby, and we'll talk about Great Gatsby. Did you see there's a theory that the Gatsby was supposed to be, like, black but, like, white passing?
I saw that.
I have a lot of,
And
I was reading into that.
It makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
This isn't going to surprise you at all, even a little bit. When I was genuinely in 10th grade or 11th grade English, whenever we read The Great Gatsby, I wrote my essay about how Nick was gay and in love with Gatsby.
The greatest narrator of all time. We don't even remember the man's name. Yep. I call him Tobey Maguire because in the movie, he was Tobey Maguire.
Fair enough. Who wouldn't be in love with Leonardo DiCaprio?
One, if you will. No, like, it makes a lot of sense because, honestly, I found them to be insufferable, like Daisy and her husband, and Nick seemed to find them too. But if it's, and, like, for Gatsby, even if he was white, it makes sense. But, like, for someone on the outside who really wanted to be a part of that life, it would make a lot of sense why, like, even after everything, he was still pushing for that, like, ideal life that he had imagined with Daisy. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting.
I agree. And you know what? You can't appreciate interesting theories like that if you're not smart enough to understand characters and narratives and storylines.
When a man says, I wonder why I used to bounce around on stage like I was high.
I think part of the issue is that with, like, TV shows or movies or... That's another thing. How is Book Talk so popular, but people can't seem to read it? Anyway, I think with, like...
Elanor, I love books, okay? Whatever they are reading on Book Talk does not qualify.
Not real books.
I'm so sorry.
But I think with, like, things like that, there's enough space between the media product and the creator that I think people are almost more comfortable putting their own narrative into it. Whereas with, like, stand-up, because it's, the guy telling stories about himself, people are like, this is more face value than I think than I think other things are. And so therefore I will not dissect it in a way that I might dissect other things. And I think that's part of the problem. But it's also like, you don't...
Yeah, and with other types of media, I think it's intentional on the part of the authors to kind of leave things vague, especially, like, back, like, when, like, Twilight era, where, like, Bella didn't really have a lot of description, like, physical descriptors, or, like, that chick from the Hunger Games. Like, it was all very vague, so, like, anyone could put themselves in there. And while, like, we were talking about different types of stand-up comedians, some tell stories that, like, anyone can relate to, but most tell stories about their lives, while they might try to make them more general and not give you, this is my doctor on blah, 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 12th Street. Like, give you those specific details. It's obviously a lot closer, so it's a lot harder to, like, even insert yourself, but you're still going to try.
Mm-hmm.
Why, I don't know, but, like...
You know who
Anyway.
else is really funny? Who is a
yeah.
woman?
Ooh.
Vanessa Bayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Churning out top quality stuff. In conclusion, happy Father's Day.
That Abbott Elementary lady? I know she doesn't
Yes,
stand up, but...
Quinta Brunson.
Brunson? Yeah.
Brunson? Yeah, Abbott's really good. Yeah. And I think another thing, I'm so sorry, Kalina tried to get us to shut up 20 minutes ago, is that women... Patton Oswalt, who is a male comedian, has a bit where a lot of, like, good films or TV shows have male writers, or male directors, but women editors. So it's like a man goes through, and Clean and I experienced this when we were getting our media degrees, where, like, a man with a video camera just video cameras everything, all of it. We get 30-minute close-ups of people's eyeballs where they're trying to tell a story.
And then when you ask, why do you need that? Because it'll look cool.
To have
yeah,
it.
But, like, where in the storyboard are we going to put it? I don't know. It's going to look cool. Okay.
And then a woman has to come in and, like, make it funny and tell a story. And I think that maybe it's okay that we don't have a lot of women stand-up comedians if they're actually, you know, doing things like editing or writing to make sure we have good stories.
Also, I know we're trying to shut up, but back to the whole, there's too many male comedians. I also think it's because, like, the audience generally skews male, but that's part of the reason for that is I don't think it's, like, a safe space for women. I don't want to use that phrase. But, like, back to the whole, like, I hate my wife jokes with, like people like Seinfeld and stuff. I hate my wife jokes and, like, our vulgar jokes about women in general. No woman's going to want to sit in that audience and listen to it, so it's not going to encourage a woman to then get up on stage and tell jokes to a room full of men who are used to laughing about degrading her.
Yeah.
Because what is she going to say to them that they're going to laugh at? Because there's no women in the room to laugh.
Brilliant. I think that's an amazing point to end on because you're so smart.
Thank you very much. This has been Don't Quote Me on That. If you come back to us next week, we will try not to berate you and say anything that will get us kicked off the internet forever, but no promises.
Yes. Don't worry. We have a woman editing this.
Yeah. She hates her job. I guess, does that make us the men? Yeah. Oh, no. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Don't quote me on that. One day we'll have an outro, but it's not today.